Coming up, what an excellent day for skeletons. Well, howdy, folks, and welcome to Minute 6 of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate The Exorcist minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time.
Right. So our minute begins with the old man looking off into the distance.
And it ends in the office of the curator of antiquities in Mosul on a close-up of a head of a large stone statue. So once again, folks, let us get into the mood. I want to read for you part of Blatty's book that deals with this particular minute, just to get us in the mood, and also because I think it reveals something about our man in khakis that is going to come up later. So here we go. A reading from the Book of Blatty. Someone wheezed from within the Chaykhana, the withered proprietor shuffling toward him, kicking up dust in Russian-made shoes that he wore like slippers, groaning backs pressed under his heels. The dark of his shadow slipped over the table. "Come in, Shai Hawaja." The man in khaki shook his head, staring down at the laceless, crusted shoes caked thick with debris of the pain of living. The stuff of the cosmos, he softly reflected. Matter. Yet, somehow, finally, spirit. Spirit and the shoes were to him but aspects of a stuff more fundamental, a stuff that was primal and totally other. The shadow shifted. The Kurd stood waiting like an ancient debt. The old man in khaki looked up into eyes that were damply bleached, as if the membrane of an eggshell had been pasted over the irises. Glaucoma. Once, he could not have loved this man. He slipped out his wallet and probed for a coin among its tattered, crumpled pennants. A few dinars, an Iraqi driver's license, a faded plastic calendar card that was 12 years out of date. It bore an inscription on the reverse. What we give to the poor is what we take with us when we die. The card had been printed by the Jesuit missions. He paid for his tea and left a tip of 50 fils on a splintered table the color of sadness. Okay, and once again, I gotta say, I love Blatty's writing. It is so vivid, so illustrative. You can see the dust and the old shoes, but I read this part because I want us to remember as we go forward, as we meet our other players in this story, everyone is possessed by something, in the grip of something. Everyone is struggling with some guilt. Everyone has skeletons in the closet about something. And so when our exorcist shows up, and folks, I think we can finally give up the ghost here. This is our exorcist. This is Father Merrin. And
I thought the exorcist was some scary monster.
Right?
With the Babadook.
Right? He was hanging out with the Babadook and drinking.
The Babadook and Godzilla and Frankenstein.
Yes.
Don't write in. I know that Frankenstein is the name of the doctor and not the monster. I just wanted to
be
clever.
Wait a minute.
I'm trying to be clever.
You know, I would argue that Dr. Frankenstein is the monster. But yet, Father Merrin, he is such a wonderful character, and I didn't want this little moment to slip by where he reflects that once he could not have loved someone, because I can't remember if his skeletons are explored in the movie. I mean, I guess we have ample time to scrutinize all the scenes, but from what I remember, when he shows up later, we get this sense of safety. We get this sense that we are in good hands, that everything is going to be all right. And we could be forgiven for thinking, oh, that's because Father Merrin is so saintly and so pure. He's holier than Karis. He's holier than the other characters, and so he can fight this demon. Not so. In fact, that is or was Father Merrin's sin, the sin of holier than thou, the sin of pride. And yet, despite that, despite his sin, we still feel a sense of goodness and safety when he is around. And that is very, very important later. But for now, just keep that in mind, because I think that is one of the messages of this story.
It is interesting as you look at Max von Sydow's performance, how much we don't know that he's a priest yet, right? As we're watching this, if we're seeing this for the first time, but he does have that, Christian sense of love extended out to these strangers. The movie around him, the design of it is hostile looking and sounding, because we have all of this clanging and these voices everywhere around the soundscape of him.
Yes.
But he looks up at the man who's giving him the tea with such empathy.
And I was actually going to mention that. So yeah, Father Merrin, I feel good that we can now call him Father Merrin. He gets up from the table and he hands the money to the proprietor, and he looks at him and he lingers. And I think in that part, we can see this depth of kindness and gentleness in him. Despite whatever he's going through in his own head, he still has time to look at this guy and to see him. And again, I really like what Max von Sydow does here.
Right. It's like genuinely, again, the way that Christians are meant to be, this sort of impossibly loving idea of humanity, right? That Christians will strive to do their entire lives towards that, right? Where this is a man who says, basically, can I get you anything else? Can I get you any tea? That's my job. But yet Father Merrin is looking at him with such love thank you for offering that.
Yes. Yes. And then we finally figure out where that noise is coming from. It is a blacksmith shop across the way. I love the change in rhythm, that steady rhythm we've been hearing this whole entire time. Folks, this started in the previous minute, and it has been going on this entire time, but it changes when one of the men stops hammering to wipe his brow, and then he turns and he catches Father Merrin looking at him, and we see that this guy is the one with the glaucoma.
Right, so that's an adaptation from the book, where it's
yes.
the tea master, it has glaucoma, and here it's the blacksmith.
Right. So now I got to wonder, because in movies, again, we're talking about like every shot is intentional. Everything has a reason. And the noise and the blacksmith shop wasn't in the book. And it was the tea shop owner who had the white eye. The blacksmith also isn't in the original screenplay.
Right. The most current version that we can find online is one that has revisions up into December of 1972. So The Exorcist starts to go into production in August of 1972 and shoots for a little bit over 100 days. So this would be near the end of production, the script that we have, and there is no blacksmith there.
So I can only assume that this is Friedkin's edition.
Right, mostly, or it would have been with Blatty's approval, right? Because Blatty was the producer and would have been on set. But perhaps they found this look on set, which would not be atypical, right? You get to set and it's not exactly what you've pre-planned, even in pre-production. You say, oh, look at this thing over here. That's very interesting.
Right. And I mean, the movie is its own thing. It doesn't have to follow the book exactly. And maybe it shouldn't, right? Maybe, I can think of a bunch of examples when the movie does a wonderful job, and then you go and you read the book and it's not the case. There's some iconic piece of the story missing from the original material.
I think that many say Stephen King books, I feel like it's okay to criticize this or feel like criticizing, because he's pretty open as well. Like several Stephen King films are better than their source material. So we often say like, oh, the book is always better, which isn't the case when you look at something like Taylor Hackford's adaptation of Dolores Claiborne, which is much, much better than the book.
Yeah. One example that immediately came to mind, and I don't know, maybe because his spirit is still here, but, we mentioned The Godfather earlier. And I mean, that is a film that will be forever remembered, in the annals of history as one of the greatest. And I remember watching it and then going to read the book, and I still like the movie.
The book is just not near the same level as the movie. It is I don't think it even has the same kind of aspirations as the movie does. It seems to be content to be sort of a what's the word, lurid sort of look at isn't it crazy what mobsters do? There's weird orgies at the Academy Awards, things like that.
Right, the seamy underbelly of the mafia. Yeah. From there, we have another abrupt cut. The sound of the hammering is replaced by the quiet ticking of clocks inside the office of the curator of antiquities. From the clock face, we see that it's 5 minutes past noon, and we get a glimpse of some ancient statue heads. I was not able to find out what these heads are of. I wonder if maybe they could be the faces of Ahura Mazda and Ahriman, possibly from the Zoroastrian faith. Zoroaster was the first guy to say that there is one good God and one bad God. And this bad God, Ahriman, was sort of influential in the shaping of our Satan being the arch nemesis of God rather than just one of his random angels. That's Satan with a capital S. Now, again, I don't know if that's what these faces here are, but it would totally fit. It's from ancient Persia, so quite possibly.
Yeah, if anyone has any information, I'd love to know that, because we do spend a lot of time looking at them, and they don't look
yes.
like the artifacts that Merrin was pulling out of the site of Nineveh. They are ambiguous enough, I think, maybe because you know more about. You basically said everything I know about Zoroastrianism in the one sentence there. But these faces don't particularly look menacing or loving, as they're shown in the movie, at least.
I kind of got the feel that the first one was good and the second one was sinister, but maybe that's just the second one seems a little bit more ruined, you know.
Right.
It seems a little bit more broken. There seems to be like a kind of like a Glasgow smile happening.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, yes, of course, it looks like the Black Dahlia murder.
Yeah, the first one seems a little bit more complete, and it has this wonderful, illustrious beard, and the second one seems a little bit more beaten up. So maybe that says a little bit more about me. I'm just making judgments on appearances, which is not a good thing.
Ancient religions, yes. But I do think that the sound transition that you're pointing out is so interesting. So we have in our previous minutes had just an overwhelming amount of sound, whether it is wind or whether it is all the workers on this ziggurat who are digging, and constant dialogue in the background. We have all this dialogue that we know is dialogue, we can't understand it, right?
Right.
And then we have, as you point out, these wind noises that are, and we have these musical tones that then become something fly-like or insect-like or buzzing-like. And then when we get out of that, then we replace that with more Arabic speaking that we can't understand, more clanging metal on metal. And then, yes, as we have the blacksmith who stops working, the sound changes, but we still have some clanging somewhere in the background. And in fact, in the over the shoulder of Father Merrin looking at the man with glaucoma, we see another man behind him doing other metal work.
Yes.
So it's like there's no peace possible in Father Merrin's brain.
This is the buzz of humanity, you could even say, right?
Right.
We're talking about flies, we're talking about locusts, but we're also talking about human beings just doing human being things.
Speaking of that, I can't see a blacksmithing scene without thinking as a film history teacher, as I often do, of the very first film with actors. I don't know if you know this, Lester. The oldest film that we know where we have actors pretending to be characters is from 1893, and it's directed by William Dixon at the Edison Studios. And so the first time that we ever had actors playing other characters who were not, say, hey, I'm myself and I'm moving my arms so you could see motion. It was actually 3 actors portraying blacksmiths in the studio, the Black Maria at the Edison Studios. So there's something about that is, the early films were just built around movement, right? Like, hey, we have this camera that can capture movement, so let's just get a shitload of movement in front of us, right? And so there's something
oh my
about
God, it's a train.
Move. Right, exactly. Oh, the train is coming right at us. Yeah, exactly. So the very first one that we have of that is just 3 guys blacksmithering.
Do you possibly think Friedkin had that in mind when he put our 3 blacksmiths in there?
I would say not. A lot of other filmmakers from his generation do go back to those early days and put in little homages to things like that. So like Scorsese, who would be the same generation as Friedkin, the last shot of Goodfellas is similar to the last shot of The Great Train Robbery. So we do have some. It's the exact same shot. You'll look at that in our in the Goodfellas podcast, I suppose. Okay, yeah. But yeah, I think that it's, for me, it's just like it expresses so much movement, and so as Merrin is like this man who's slowing down physically, it helps to express like his overwhelming state of mind.
Incidentally, there is a Goodfellas Minute. So yeah, folks, if Goodfellas is a movie that you are into, go check that out as well. Oh, yes.
I actually do have another question now that I think about it. So, oh gosh, I hope we're not going over our time, but I wanted to speak about time. So the transition from outside into the antiquities office is this clock. And, you really were having me think a lot about, how much we take for granted through the visual nature of film, like whether this is Pazuzu or Satan or some other devil, or whether these things in Iraq are actually connected to the things in Georgetown. And one of the things that this reminds me of with this transition where we're just looking at this clock is, how much time do you think has passed between the Iraq sequences and the Georgetown sequences? Something about film makes it feel that this is causing the next thing to happen, or it's immediately after, but we have no indication of that.
You are absolutely right. I didn't even think about that. I was caught up in trying to discern how many days have gone by with Father Merrin in Iraq, because I'm looking at the sun. I'm looking at, okay, the sun is rising, the sun is setting. Okay, it's noon now, but like it was in the west, with the southwest wind and everything like that. So I had my hands full trying to figure that out.
Right. Are these sequences in Iraq in 1973? Are they 15 years earlier? We don't really have any way to know that.
Time is an enigma, Keenan.
Who can say where the time goes? Time
is a Pazuzu. But yeah, I think that is it for this minute. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to go over, talking about ancient Sumeria, ancient Mesopotamia, and those religions, and then how they relate to the Abrahamic religions. And we'll talk about Abrahamic religions as well. But that's going to be in the minutes coming up. And of course, we're going to get to talk about our guy Pazuzu again. But for this minute, I think we are good. Keenan, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I'm looking forward to learning more about ancient religions.
All right. Well, I think that is it. Keenan, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
All right. So, folks, until next time, the power of blacksmithing compels you.